May 12, 1943, Kolombangara Island, Solomon Islands. The jungle was on fire. Not with flames, but with sound. An endless roar of mortars, the shriek of Japanese Type 92 heavy machine guns, and the thunder of shells tearing through the canopy. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid stench of gunpowder, burning leaves, and sweat-soaked uniforms. Sam Carter pressed his back against the cold steel of an M4A1 Sherman, its engine coughing and sputtering as mud swallowed its tracks. The tank's crew shouted inside, voices muffled by the clang of ricochets. A shell slammed into the earth nearby, showering him with dirt and fragments. His helmet rang like a bell, the weight pressing down on his skull. The jungle floor was a swamp of blood and rainwater. Boots sank deep, sucking at every step. Radios crackled with static, then died, lines cut, batteries drowned. The Browning M1919 beside him spat bursts of fire, its barrel glowing red, the gunner screaming as he swapped belts of .30-06 ammo. The ping of an M1 Garand clip echoed somewhere in the chaos, followed by the hollow thud of a body hitting the mud. Above, the sky was a blur of P-47 Thunderbolts diving, their engines howling, strafing enemy positions. But the Japanese kept coming, waves of infantry, bayonets glinting, voices rising in a chilling chorus. A Panzer IV, supplied by their German allies, rumbled forward, its cannon swiveling toward the Sherman. Sam raised his Garand, heart pounding, hands slick with sweat. He squeezed the trigger. Click. The rifle jammed. The enemy charge surged closer, shadows breaking through smoke, bayonets lowered. Sam's breath caught in his throat. Before we continue this unbelievable story, make sure to subscribe, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about World War II. The roar of the jungle faded into memory, rewinding years earlier to the cold Atlantic wind sweeping across Norfolk Naval Base. Sam Carter stood in line with 39 other men, each branded by society as criminals. Some had stolen cars, others had run rackets, a few had blood on their hands. The Navy didn't care. They needed men who could fight dirty, improvise, and survive where conventional soldiers couldn't. The training was brutal. At dawn, whistles shrieked, boots slammed against frozen pavement, and curses filled the air. Sam's lungs burned as he sprinted across obstacle courses, mud clinging to his uniform. His M1 Garand weighed heavy on his shoulder, the steel biting into bone. Every day, they drilled with Browning M1919 machine guns, the barrels glowing red after long bursts, forcing them to swap out parts with blistered hands. Salt air mixed with sweat and gun oil. The men learned to swim miles in freezing water, packs dragging them down, lungs screaming for air. Amphibious assault drills had them storming mock beaches under live fire, sand exploding around them as instructors barked orders. Overhead, P-47 Thunderbolts roared past, their engines rattling the earth, reminding them of the war waiting across the ocean. Among the recruits was Red Dawson, a former bank robber with a crooked grin and fists like sledgehammers. He clashed with Sam constantly, two men too stubborn to yield. Yet in the chaos of training, rivalry sharpened them both. Their mentor, Lieutenant Jack Monroe, a decorated officer with scars from Guadalcanal, pushed them harder than anyone else. "You're not here to be soldiers," he growled. "You're here to be ghosts." Weeks blurred into months. Bruises became calluses. Fear became instinct. Sam's body hardened, but his mind carried the weight of his past. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting to prove he was more than the label stamped on his record. One evening, as the men collapsed in the barracks, a courier arrived. Orders. Deployment to the Pacific. The room fell silent, the air heavy with anticipation. Sam stared at the paper, his heartbeat echoing louder than the distant crash of waves. The next morning, they would leave the safety of Norfolk behind. Ahead lay jungles, fire, and an enemy 30,000 strong. The transport ship groaned as it cut through the restless waters of the South Pacific. Sam Carter leaned against the railing, the salt spray stinging his face, the diesel fumes thick in the air. Around him, the 40 men of his unit, ex-cons, misfits, and outcasts, stood in silence, each carrying the weight of their past and the uncertainty of their future. As dawn broke, Guadalcanal came into view. The shoreline was littered with wreckage from battles past. Rusting helmets half buried in sand, burned-out Sherman tanks left like skeletal husks, and rifles planted upright in the earth to mark graves. The smell of rot and salt mingled with the heavy humidity, pressing down on the men like a shroud. Sam's boots thudded against the wooden planks as they disembarked. The beach was eerily quiet, save for the distant rumble of artillery. Then, without warning, the silence shattered. Japanese shells screamed overhead, detonating in geysers of sand and smoke. The men dove for cover, packs slamming into the ground, helmets rattling. A Browning M1919 was hastily set up, its barrel already hot from suppressive fire. The gunner cursed as he fed belts of ammo, the weapon's staccato bursts echoing across the beach. Radios crackled with static, voices drowned by explosions. Sam gripped his M1 Garand, the familiar weight grounding him as chaos erupted. Above, the sky darkened with the silhouettes of Japanese Zeros. Their engines whined like banshees as they swooped low, strafing the shoreline. Bullets tore through crates, splinters flying. 1-0 banked hard, its machine guns hammering the deck of the transport ship. Men screamed as flames licked across the hull. Sam's heart pounded. He sprinted toward cover, mud sucking at his boots, sweat dripping into his eyes. The transport ship behind him shuddered violently, a plume of fire erupting from its side. The blast knocked him to the ground, ears ringing, vision blurred. Through the haze, he saw it, their only lifeline, their supply ship, engulfed in flames, sinking fast. And the Japanese aircraft were circling back for another run. The jungle swallowed them whole. After surviving the fiery chaos at Guadalcanal, Sam Carter and his unit were ferried under cover of night to Kolombangara. The air was heavy, thick with humidity, mosquitoes whining in their ears, mud sucking at every step. The men moved in silence, packs digging into their shoulders, rifles slick with condensation. By dawn, intelligence officers laid out the impossible: 30,000 Japanese troops entrenched across the island. Artillery dug into ridges, machine gun nests hidden in the undergrowth, tanks supplied by German allies prowling the jungle clearings. And against them, 40 men branded as criminals. Their mission was sabotage, infiltrate, destroy supply lines, and cripple the Japanese war machine from within. Sam stared at the maps spread across the damp wooden table. His stomach churned. He knew what this meant. They were pawns, expendable, sent to bleed the enemy before the main force arrived. Lieutenant Monroe's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the truth. We're ghosts now. No reinforcements. No retreat. Just us. The men trudged deeper into the jungle. Sweat poured down their backs, boots squelching in muck. The smell of rotting food and human waste drifted from abandoned camps. Every sound was amplified: the crack of a branch, the hiss of insects, the distant rumble of engines. Sam's heartbeat thudded in his ears, each step heavier than the last. Then they saw it. Through the foliage, a clearing opened to reveal a massive Japanese supply depot. Crates stacked high with ammunition, fuel drums glistening in the sun, and rows of Panzer IV tanks idling like steel beasts. MG-42 nests lined the perimeter, barrels glinting, crews alert. Sam crouched low, breath caught in his throat. The depot was a fortress, bristling with firepower. 40 men against an army. And the tanks were already turning their turrets toward the jungle. The jungle clearing was alive with menace. The Japanese depot loomed ahead, guarded by MG-42 nests and Panzer IVs idling like predators. Sam Carter crouched low, sweat dripping into his eyes, the humidity pressing against his lungs. Every breath tasted of gasoline and rot. The plan was suicide, 40 men against an army, but Sam's mind raced back to his childhood in Indiana. Long nights spent tinkering with broken tractors, hotwiring cars to impress girls, fixing engines with nothing but wire and grit. Mechanics had been his curse, the reason for his arrest. Now, it was his salvation. "Truck," Sam whispered, pointing to a Japanese supply vehicle parked near the depot's edge. Its ignition was exposed, wires dangling. If they could get it running, they might slip inside disguised as a resupply convoy. Lieutenant Monroe hesitated, but Sam's eyes burned with conviction. "I can do it." Red Dawson smirked. "Better not fry us all, grease monkey." Sam crawled through mud, the stench of oil thick in his nostrils. He slid beneath the truck, fingers trembling as he stripped wires with his combat knife. Sparks hissed, the smell of burning insulation filling the air. His heart hammered, every second felt like eternity. Then, with a cough and a roar, the engine sputtered to life. The men piled in, rifles hidden under tarps, sweat dripping onto steel. The truck rattled forward, gears grinding, every bump echoing like a gunshot. Japanese guards glanced at them, suspicion flickering, but the camouflage held. Inside the depot, Red Dawson proved his worth. When a sentry approached, Red moved like lightning, knife flashing, silence swallowing the man's scream. Blood mingled with gasoline, the air thick with tension. Sam gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white. The truck rolled deeper into enemy territory, crates of ammunition towering around them. His pulse raced, sweat soaking his uniform. Then, disaster. The truck shuddered, gears grinding, and stalled, dead center in the depot. Japanese soldiers turned, eyes narrowing, rifles rising. The truck's engine died in the middle of the depot, silence lasting only a heartbeat before chaos erupted. Japanese soldiers shouted, rifles snapping to their shoulders. Sam Carter's pulse hammered in his ears as he threw himself from the cab, Garand raised. The first shot cracked, echoing through the clearing, and the battle began. The Browning M1919 set up by Dawson roared to life, its barrel glowing as belts of .30-06 tore into the enemy ranks. The sound was deafening, metallic clatter, brass casings raining onto mud, the smell of hot oil and cordite choking the air. Sam ducked behind a crate, the wood splintering as MG-42 rounds chewed through it, the German weapons terrifying 1,200 rounds per minute ripping the silence apart. Sherman tanks rumbled forward, their tracks grinding against the depot's earth. One fired, the cannon's recoil shaking the ground, the shell slamming into a Panzer IV with a thunderous explosion. Flames erupted, black smoke curling skyward. The Japanese countered with mortars, shells whistling down, detonating in geysers of mud and blood. Overhead, the scream of P-47 thunderbolts filled the sky. Their engines howled as they dove, .50 caliber rounds stitching across enemy positions, strafing MG nests. The jungle canopy lit up with muzzle flashes, smoke curling through leaves, visibility reduced to a haze of fire and shadow. Sam's Garand pinged as the clip ejected. He slammed another in, the weight of the rifle biting into his shoulder. His hands shook, sweat dripping onto the stock, but he fired again, each shot a desperate rhythm against the tide. Lieutenant Monroe's voice cut through the chaos. Push forward. Sabotage the fuel drums. His command was steady, but his face was pale, jaw clenched against fear. The men surged, grenades flying, explosions ripping through stacks of ammunition. The depot became a hellscape, fire-consuming crates, tanks burning, screams echoing. Sam sprinted through smoke, lungs burning, boots slipping in mud. He saw Monroe ahead, rallying men, his pistol barking. Then, in an instant, a mortar shell landed nearby. The blast threw Monroe to the ground, shrapnel tearing into his chest. Sam froze, horror flooding him. Monroe's blood soaked the mud, his hand reaching weakly toward Sam. "You lead them," he gasped, voice fading. The weight of command fell heavy on Sam's shoulders. Around him, men looked to him, eyes wide, waiting. The depot burned, the enemy regrouped, and the battle raged on. Sam gripped his Garand tighter, heart pounding. He was no longer just a soldier, he was their leader. And the next wave was already coming. The depot was a furnace of fire and steel. Smoke curled upward in choking plumes, blotting out the sun. Sam Carter's lungs burned as he dragged himself through mud slick with blood and oil. Around him, the remnants of his unit fought desperately. 40 men reduced to barely half, their faces blackened with soot, their eyes hollow but unyielding. The Japanese counterattack surged like a tidal wave. MG-42s rattled from hidden nests, their barrels glowing red. Mortars shrieked overhead, detonating with concussive blasts that rattled Sam's teeth. A Sherman tank belched smoke, its cannon jammed, crews scrambling to clear the breach. Every weapon seemed to falter under the relentless pressure. Sam's gaze locked on the command bunker at the depot's heart. Reinforcements poured from it, officers shouting orders, runners darting with maps, radio operators relaying commands. If that bunker stood, the Japanese would regroup and crush them. If it fell, the tide might turn. He stumbled toward a fallen comrade, hands trembling as he lifted the heavy tube of AM-1A1 bazooka. The weapon was cold steel against his shoulder, its weight immense, its promise final. His fingers fumbled with the rocket, sliding it into place, the smell of grease and powder filling his nostrils. Red Dawson appeared at his side, face streaked with grime. "You miss, we're dead," he growled, voice raw. Sam nodded, sweat dripping into his eyes, heartbeat pounding louder than the gunfire. He knelt, sighting the bunker through the haze. His vision blurred, ears ringing from nearby explosions. The bazooka's backblast would be brutal, but there was no choice. He steadied his breath, muscles screaming, hands slick with sweat. The Japanese officers inside barked commands, unaware of the shadow in the smoke. Sam squeezed the trigger. The rocket streaked forward, a trail of fire cutting through the haze. It slammed into the bunker with a thunderous explosion, the blast collapsing walls, sending debris skyward. The ground shook, the air filled with dust and screams. Sam's ears rang, his vision went white. The concussion knocked him backward, helmet skidding across mud. He gasped, lungs refusing air, the world spinning. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the bunker crumbling, flames consuming its heart. Then, silence. The battlefield was silent now, save for the crackle of flames and the distant cries of the wounded. Kolombangara's jungle, once alive with gunfire and chaos, had become a graveyard of steel and ash. Smoke drifted lazily across the clearing, curling around shattered crates and the twisted wreckage of tanks. Sam Carter stirred, his body aching, ears still ringing from the bazooka's blast. He pushed himself upright, mud clinging to his uniform, helmet dented and slick with blood. Around him, survivors moved like shadows, faces hollow, eyes glazed, uniforms torn. Medics rushed between bodies, their hands stained red, stretchers creaking under the weight of the fallen. The depot was gone, reduced to rubble. The Japanese command had collapsed with the bunker, their forces scattered, their momentum broken. But the cost was unbearable. Of the 40 men branded criminals, fewer than half remained. Each survivor carried scars deeper than flesh, scars of brotherhood, sacrifice, and the knowledge that they had been sent to die, yet refused to yield. Sam knelt beside Lieutenant Monroe's body, the officer's face pale, eyes closed. He whispered a promise into the smoke, "We'll finish what you started." His voice cracked, but his resolve hardened. He understood now, their mission wasn't just sabotage. It was proof. Proof that unconventional warfare, stealth, sabotage, and amphibious assault could change the tide of battle. As dawn broke, the survivors gathered, silent, watching the jungle smolder. They had been called criminals, expendables, ghosts. But history would call them something else. Their tactics, their sacrifice, their impossible victory would become the blueprint for a new kind of warrior. Sam Carter stared into the rising sun, the smoke curling around him like a shroud. His chest ached, his heart heavy, but his voice was steady. "They called us criminals," he whispered, "but history called us something else." If this story moved you, subscribe now, because countless untold battles of courage and sacrifice still wait to be heard.